First of all, I would like to welcome each of those who are visiting with us today. Welcome to Blessed Sacrament. Second, we are celebrating today the most wonderful and important feast that we have in the Catholic Church. St. Paul says that actually we exist as church because Jesus Christ didn't stay dead. He was risen. So that's why we are here. Because we believe that he is alive somehow in our midst. He is there. This is what we believe. And that's why you and I are here. When we think about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, in my opinion, actually when I thought, and I have thinking many times about that, we make some mistakes, actually two mistakes. The first one is that we may think about an event in the past. Jesus Christ suffered death and Jesus Christ rise from the dead. And this is a reality. We believe about that. I mean, we believe that one day, many, many years ago, centuries ago, he rised. We don't know how. And please don't think about that too much because we are not going to have any answer. How that happened. I remember when I was younger, I used to think about that and thinking, how that happened, how is possible that somebody who was dead was able to come back to life. And now, as the gospel say he was able to to have a teletransportation, go from one place to another. Okay, I couldn't find a final answer to that. So, but again, this is one mistake. The second mistake is to think that one day we are going to share that resurrection after our death. I'm saying mistake, I'm not saying that this is not true, okay? So we can see an event that is going to happen in the future. And most of the time, we don't see that very close for some reason. We all think that that is not going to happen to us tomorrow. We see that this is a lot of time. It's going to happen, we know that. Again, don't forget, I'm not saying that this is not true. We believe that. We believe that Jesus Christ, this is the past, Jesus Christ died, suffered, and he was raised. And we also believe, and this is true, that we are going to, like Jesus Christ, be resurrected one day. Again, both cases, we don't know how it's going to happen. I don't want to think about that too much, which means I don't want to talk about that. But we believe that. In both cases, the problem is that we forget about the present. So we forget to think about how these two realities, which is true, affect our lives. And I think, in my opinion, that even if we believe that and we believe that, we waste our time thinking too much about that and about that, how that happened, how it's going to happen, and we forget that, how the resurrection of Jesus Christ has to affect our lives. That belief has to say something to us right now, right here. Once we leave church, our lives should change because they have an effect in our life. I don't want to say that what I'm going to say is my thought. Actually, it's St. Paul's thoughts. It seems that he was in the same problem, that his communities were thinking maybe the same thing that I'm going to say. Excuse me, that I just said. And that's why he wrote to them, telling them, asking them to keep in mind that the resurrection, the belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ has an effect in their daily life. Somehow, when we believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that has to affect our life, how we walk in this life. And this is how, and having that in mind, St. Paul wrote to the Colossians, brothers and sisters. I'm going to read it again, it's very short. If then you were raised with Christ, so now I have to explain something. How we had been raised with Christ, or when that happened. You may say, when? I don't remember. Many of you may not remember. I don't remember either, don't worry. For us, that happened the day of our baptism. So we have to go now to St. Paul again. He explains that the day of our baptism, actually that was the reading of the letter of St. Paul to the Romans last evening in the Easter Vigil. St. Paul explained there in chapter 6 how that happened. How we raised with Jesus Christ. How? He was talking about the sin, and he was saying, you Christians, you have to remember that you are dead to the sin, which means you should not commit sin anymore. And to explain that, he says, when we all died to sin, he says, in baptism. In baptism, the day of our baptism, we died to sin and we share the death of Jesus Christ on his cross. And sharing the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, we are sharing the burial of Jesus Christ. And sharing the burial, we are sharing the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So, in a very beautiful way, St. Paul is saying, the day of our baptism, we have been we died, we have been buried, and we resurrected. Spiritual way, mystical way, sacramentally way, if you want. And right now he's saying, he's talking to the Colossians. Remember, that day of your baptism, you raised with Christ. And that makes the whole difference in the world. So we are not now like other people who are not baptized under the dominion of sin. Let me tell that in another way. Let me tell you that in another way. We, the day of our baptism, we was brought into another sphere different than the sphere of this world. We are in another dominion. We are part of Jesus Christ, his life. And because of that, says St. Paul, we have to seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. So we don't belong here, if you want. We human beings are a little bit funny. We like to think that we belong here. We like to think that divisions are very important. We create passports. We have different language, you can see that. So we try many times in our head to think that we belong here. By reality, St. Paul says also that our true home is heaven. So this is what he's talking about actually. Don't forget that home is not here. As beautiful as it is, I love Charleston. It's beautiful, a beautiful city. But it's not home. You may love, I don't know where are you coming from, and it's fine, but we cannot forget that home for us is not here, it's heaven. So we have to seek what is there. So to live a resurrected life, to say it that way, is to seek what is in there. St. Paul says, those things that are above. Why? Because our life, he said that in a beautiful way, is hidden with Christ in God there. It's like God there with Jesus Christ. He's saying, my brothers and my sister, Jesus Christ, and God our Father, my sons and daughters, we are waiting here for you. Don't forget that. Live in that beautiful place where you are right now, remembering that we are here. Death for us is going to be the door to that wonderful life with Christ. The resurrection in the future that I was talking about. Remember, future was here, past was there. But we have to start living that right now here. Right now, how we do that? I'm just going to read that. You can go to your homes, and if you want, you can meditate about that. Remember, we are in chapter 3 of the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians, verse 1 to verse 4. He says that. You have to look that. So in verse 5 to 11, he said what we have to put to death. And this is what he says. Immorality, impurity, passion, evil, desire, and the greed that is idolatry. You must put them all away. Anger, fury, malice, slander, and obscene language out of your mouth. Stop lying to one another, since you have taken off the old self with its practices. We don't belong here, so we have to stop doing that. This is the way to live a resurrected life, St. Paul says, putting that to death. And what we have to put on. This is what St. Paul says to the Colossians, verses 12 to 15. Heartfelt compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another. If one has a grievance against another, as the Lord has forgiven you, you must also do the same thing. And over all this, put on love, that is the bond of perfection, love. So my brothers and sisters, today while we celebrate this wonderful feast in the Catholic Church, I want to invite you to keep that in mind. We have been buried with Christ, and because of that we have been raised with Christ. And to be buried, to die with Christ, to be buried with Christ, and to rise with Christ means to do something in this present life. And this is what St. Paul is telling us. So let us try to meditate about that. And let us try to see how we are doing it in our everyday life, and try to make some progress, especially in this Easter season.